Okay, when I say Samuel Adams, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's probably a cold pint of Baston Lager, right? But the story of the actual guy on that label, wow, it's way more complex and honestly a lot more surprising than you'd think. So, you know the beer. It was launched back in 1985 on Patriots Day by a brewer named Jim Koch. And he named it after this famous revolutionary figure. The beer just exploded. It became this massive phenomenon, pretty much kicking off the whole craft beer revolution in America. But what about the man himself, the real Samuel Adams? Well, his story is something else. It's a mix of, believe it or not, total failure, some serious political genius, and a legacy that's so hard to pin down that even his own family had trouble figuring him out.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right off the bat. Here's the big twist. The guy whose name is on one of the most famous beers in America was a complete and utter failure in the beer business.
I mean, the difference between the brand we know today and the man himself is just wild. The beer, an award-winning, iconic success story. The man, well, for starters, he was a failed maltster. He wasn't even a brewer. He inherited his dad's malt house and just ran it straight into the ground. His enemies actually made fun of him, calling him Sam the Maltster. After that, he tried being a tax collector. How'd that go? So badly that by 1765, he was in debt to the government for over £8,000. Not a great track record. So you have to ask, right? How does that guy, the one who couldn't run a business to save his life or even collect taxes, how does he become one of the most important, most influential political figures in all of American history? Well, a lot of it started with personal struggle. Back in 1741, the British Parliament shut down a land bank his father was involved in, and it basically ruined the family financially. That experience lit a fire in him, a deep, lifelong distrust of powerful, faraway government. So he started writing. He co-founded a newspaper to publish political essays, and his big moment came in 1764 when he wrote this argument against the Sugar Act. It was one of the very first times anyone officially made the case for no taxation without representation. And just a year later, by 1765, he was elected to the Massachusetts House. He had finally found the one thing he was truly good at: politics. But, as his political star started to rise, people started to look at how he was doing things. And this kicked off a huge debate that historians are still having today. Was Samuel Adams a principled patriot fighting for freedom? Or was he a master propagandist, basically manipulating everyone? Take a look at this quote. It's from a historian named John C. Miller, and it really sums up the more critical view that was popular for a long time. It pictures Adams as this kind of shadowy puppet master, leading the Sons of Liberty, who were, the most intense anti-British guys around, and just stirring up angry mobs to get what he wanted politically. So you've got these two very different pictures of the guy. The propagandist view says he was this fanatic who loved stirring up mob violence. But then there's the more modern patriot view. This side argues that actually he hated illegal riots. He thought they were counterproductive. He preferred to use legal, organized methods like boycotts. And from this angle, he wasn't really a radical trying to create something brand new. He was more of a conservative, just trying to protect the rights he believed the colonists were supposed to have all along. But here's the bottom line. It almost doesn't matter which side you fall on, propagandist or patriot, because one thing is absolutely undeniable. Samuel Adams was a political genius, a brilliant organizer. You could even argue he was the main architect of the whole American Revolution. I mean, the guy practically wrote the playbook on how to start a revolution. Step 1, he got everyone to boycott British goods. He turned shopping into a political act. Then, step 2, in 1772, he came up with this incredible idea, the Committees of Correspondence. Think of it like the 18th century internet. It was a network connecting patriots in all 13 colonies, letting them share information and coordinate their plans. And then the big one. He was the first person to stand up and say, hey, we need to get everyone together. We need a Continental Congress to figure out a united path forward. And of course, you can't talk about Sam Adams without talking about the big one, the event he's most famous for, the Boston Tea Party. So on that night, December 16, 1773, a bunch of patriots, some of them dressed up as Mohawk Indians, stormed 3 ships in the harbor, and they proceeded to dump 342 chests of tea right into the water. That is 8 ton of tea. It was a huge, expensive protest against Britain's Tea Act. So, where was Adams in all this? He was actually running a town meeting at the Old South Meeting House. When word came that the governor wouldn't let the tea ships go back to England, Adams stood up and said, "This meeting can do nothing more to save the country." Now, for a long, long time, everyone thought that was it, the secret signal to start the party. But, most historians today think that's a myth. Eyewitnesses actually said the crowd didn't even start leaving for another 10 minutes, and that Adams was trying to keep the meeting going. The signal story just makes for better drama, I guess. Okay, so after all of that, the organizing, the revolution, helping to build a brand new country, what are we left with? What is Samuel Adams's final legacy? Well, just like the man himself, it's pretty hard to pin down. Just look at his resume. It's incredible. Leader of the Sons of Liberty? Check. Delegate to the Continental Congress? Check. Signed the Declaration of Independence? Yup. Helped write the Massachusetts Constitution? Uh-huh. Later became lieutenant governor and then governor of Massachusetts? You bet. The guy was there for literally every major step. And yet, for all that, he's still kind of a mystery. His own cousin, John Adams, the president, said that people would never really know who Samuel was. And part of that was on purpose. Samuel Adams was a very private man, and he actually burned a lot of his own letters and papers. He deliberately left holes in his own story for us to guess at. So what does that leave us with? We've got a man who couldn't run a business but helped create a nation. A man who some call a patriot and others call a propagandist. And a name that, let's be honest, is probably more famous today for being on a beer bottle than for what he actually did. Which brings us to the final question, really. How are we supposed to remember a figure like this? A guy who's part myth, part man, and 100% revolutionary.